guys, it's RetroGamingNow back with Riven, and when we last left off we were here on Temple Island by the dome, and we were going to head back to Crater Island and try and get into that building we saw out there. So we can head across the drawbridge and head back. That's where we're trying to go. And as we get closer, a couple things. One, this does look like a tram thing, and you can see trams go out there somewhere else. Don't know where. And then this here is that logging cart we took out. So it goes into the water over here and in back to Jungle Island. So let's head back here. And this door is locked, so maybe there's some way to other way in. If you actually look, there's some sort of wire going by here. I don't know where that goes. And there's a switch. It sounds kind of like that fan. Maybe it's on the other side of this wall or something. So let's flip that switch. And the fan turned off. Yep. Okay, well, how does that help us? I don't really know right now. So let's head back over here. Actually, let's see if we got another frog. Let's pull that up. And here he comes. Yes, we did. I wonder if it's the same type of frog. Or something else. That's another one. He didn't even eat it. Oh, it's rolling it. It just looks so cool. Anyway, so we know that those must be important for something. It seems like there's a whole lot of them here on this island. When we turn this fan off up here, could that be helpful? Well, we've crawled through pipes before. Maybe we can crawl through it again. Yes, we can. So we are now in another pipe. We are crawling through, and where is this going to take us? Drop down. Where are we? We are inside of that building that we couldn't get into. So we can open the door, unlock it, and so we can get back in here if we need to. Oh, hopefully it's unlocked. Anyway, so looking around, it appears to be a 5-sided room, and we've seen 5 quite often throughout our time here. And you can see we came out of this here. It's got lots of pillars. It kind of looks like the gate room in a way, with these pillars on the edge. And what's up top? I can't look up. Gives me the option to, though. Anyways, so let's this is where we started out. Let's sit down here and see what we've got. Looks like we've got a journal. Actually, real quick, you'll notice this crest on here is on the journals, and we've thought that maybe this crest is Gehn's. Let's read this and see what we have. The latest ink formulation has proven a failure. Even when writing in my most promising books, I obtain only the barest glimmer of a connection. It is frustrating to expand so much effort creating a blank book only to end up destroying it when it doesn't work. There are days when the lab is uncomfortably warm from the flames of these failed attempts. The further I refine each element, the formulations of the inks and papers, the physical dimensions of the book, the more I realize that the list of potential combinations is nearly infinite. It is during moments like these that I despair. Without access to Dunny, my long-term goals may never be accomplished. Nevertheless, there are avenues of research which remain to be explored. Next entry. I am discontinuing regular observations of the stars beneath the fissure. Although I've been able to track the dark cloud-like formations that migrate through the star field and have proven that their paths are cyclical, without proper instrumentation it is pointless to continue. My general theory concerning the nature of the fissure has remained unaltered since it first appeared. It seems that the fabric of this age has been breached in a way that permits matter to be hospitably exchanged between two discrete but overlapping spaces, much like a link. But the apparent physical contradictions surrounding this juncture defy logical reason. The great column of wind that was formed when the fissure first appeared suggests a vacuum as one might expect in space, yet early experimentations reveal the presence of a breathable atmosphere. That Atrus and Catherine threw themselves into the void is further evidence that it might be safe to travel, but without knowing its true nature, I cannot take the risk myself. Without knowing its true nature, I cannot take the risk myself. It is also difficult to say what would happen if I were to reopen it after so long, but it is likely that the results would be catastrophic, given the changes that have occurred in this age since that time. Maintenance on the steam vent caps completed. I am extremely pleased with the continued success of this system. I believe the construction to have been true to Dunny designs of my memory, another example of the superiority of Dunny technology. It's iconic that Atrus and Catherine unwittingly provided me with such a convenient source of power. And that confirms what we were talking about earlier. Steam is very important. What's it important for, though? As with many of my views over the years, my thoughts regarding the origin of the fissure have changed. I have recently begun to wonder whether it was actually an unexpected byproduct of the changes Catherine and Atrus wrote into this age during their escape. Certainly, by casting their linking book into the void, they trapped me here have something effectively, but I do not believe that Atrus intended the book to be lost in this manner. Much better to destroy it than risk the possibility of it falling into unknown hands. Also, they foresaw the creation of the fissure. They would surely have thought that the vacuum it created would eventually consume the atmosphere of this planet, a late which Catherine undoubtedly would have deemed unacceptable for her homeworld. If I had not been there to supervise the construction of this seal, is most certainly what would have happened, for the villagers were far too frightened to even approach the vortex without my urging. I hold on to the belief that it was an unintended consequence of their writing for another reason so well. I prefer to think that my son had meant for this age to be merely a prison for me, rather than a death sentence. So a couple things. We know now that this is Gehn's journal, which we probably could have assumed because of the crest. And also another thing, there's a lot of little tidbits in here. It talks a lot about the star fissure and how he's observing the star fissure. We don't really know what the star fissure is, but it seems to be this catastrophic thing that holds balance between ages, or you can go between ages or something. Whatever it is, though, it seems pretty powerful. And he talked about the vacuum and the steam, and the book fell into the star fissure, and that was the start of mist. So the book fell into the star fissure, showed up at the stranger's door, and the stranger took it, and that's us. Now, one thing is, Gehn seems to think that perhaps the star fissure could cause catastrophic changes to this ages and destruction of the age. And if we think about it, Atrus has a way to view sort of the stability of this age. We don't quite know what it is, but he talks about in his journal he can see some things that are going on in this age. And so perhaps if there's a way we could activate that star fissure, we could see or signal Atrus once we've done what we had to. Another thing, it talked about Catherine and her people, which makes us think that perhaps Catherine is Rivenese. She came from Riven. All right, next entry. The construction of the imagers has proceeded without fault. It is interesting to see how easily I've been able to adopt the Dunny technology to mimic that of the arm, Ahmad, something. In some ways, the similarities between the two cultures was striking. I wonder if perhaps there had been communication as or commerce between the two cultures in earlier times. Maybe Ketos people were even descendants of the Dunny. It pleases me to think so. And then here we've got a picture of this thing, which we've seen before. Yeah, it's hard to tell what's going on, but this is the imager here that we saw in the schoolhouse. Yeah, I can't quite see what's happening here, but that's what it is. And, you know, this one thing does confirm that it does look like Gehn designed this imager, and that probably was Gehn in the imager. Note, it's possible that if I were to somehow be able to supply the books with a power source of sufficient magnitude, I could suppress the variance enough to facilitate a solid link. It is doubtful that the geothermal cap generators could provide such an enormous surge. Perhaps if I could adopt the fire marbles. He was talking about there, he's saying there's lots of issues with his books. He's trying to write books, but they're just unstable, and so he's thinking perhaps there's some way he could power them up to make them stable. He's talking about the geothermal cap generators. I believe, like, that's that steam power that we've been seeing so far. And he said, perhaps I could adopt the fire marbles. We don't know what those are. I've been cataloging the natural elements of this age for nearly 30 years now. Yet I still continue to find evidence of the Dunny preoccupation with 5. As a boy, it was very clear to me that the number had a special significance to the Dunny society. From the ancient heraldic emblems of the ruling elite to the humble homes of the commoners, it was ubiquitous, its presence here obviously a direct reflection of the minds that designed the texts that I used to compose this age. Further proof that through their art the Dunny masters were indeed creating the marvelous worlds they wrote, and not, as many have mistakenly thought, merely building links to pre-existing worlds. So a couple things there. He's talking about 5 and how important 5 is, and we've definitely seen that so far. We've seen 5 everywhere in this age, and this is even Gehn's 5th age. And he's talking about how he believes that when the Dunny wrote, so he's talking about the art here, and what the art here is the art of writing linking books that lead to different ages. And so Gehn believes that when they write linking books, they create the worlds, as opposed to linking to one of many pre-existing worlds. Which Atrus believes the other way. In the journal, he actually talks about how he thinks that Gehn is mistaken in that area. While most of my constructions have been based on Dunny designs, I see now that the ones that I have imbued with the power of 5 are clearly the most beautiful, the most perfect, and I believe the most structurally sound. I am still attempting to determine how the Dunny color symbology reflects this superior design principle. Although superficially it is based on 6 color system, I am convinced that there has to be a deeper connection to 5. I will continue to investigate. Does that look familiar at all? We have seen this symbol before, and this symbol that we saw, in fact, we've seen all these symbols before. These are the symbols that are on the side of the rotating domes that we saw earlier. So these symbols rotate and goes through all these. And there's 6 symbols here, but Gehn thinks that there's 5. There should be 5. And it's talking about something about color system. But we haven't seen any sort of colors except for the yellow one, which is what this one was. Next entry. I finally made a breakthrough. I have succeeded in modifying the fire marbles to generate enough power to hold a descriptive linking book in a stable matrix. I've linked to a new world. It is a harsh and desolate age, but is nonetheless well suited for my purposes, and I have designated it my something. By studying it closely, I believe I will eventually be able to create a more appropriate age for me to settle on. For now, I will build an office and set up my living quarters there, in order that I may conduct my experiments in safety and without distraction. Whoops. So, he has made a breakthrough, and somehow he's able to use the fire marbles to generate enough power. And let's keep on reading. He's got some pictures here of something, maybe a... Yeah, it's hard to tell what it is. I must admit that I am proud of my work. To think that in such primitive conditions I've accomplished in 29 years what it took the original Dunny centuries to achieve. Note: the repair outerwear for work on this world. The goggles need to be redesigned altogether. Which, if you think about it, it is pretty impressive that he's able to create linking books and, link to other worlds using just what he has on this age that he's stranded on. Okay, next entry. I've begun construction of a series of link sites for each island that will connect Riven to my new office on something. The Survey Guild has finally completed the site location for each island. According to my exact specifications, an installation of the domes is underway at last. The work on the central power source got off to a bit of a bad start, I'm afraid, but the pace has picked up considerably since then, and I anticipate no further delays. I'm looking forward to finally having a civilized mode of transportation. And so, this here is the power source. This giant golden dome is the power source, and we've seen this before. This symbol here, and each of these is a pipe going out to different islands. And you can see this is one of the domes that we saw earlier. This dome we saw inside the cave, and so it rotates around, so it flips up. And so this seems to be, if you think about what's going on here, all these connections. So there's one of these on each island, and that so far seems true. And this holds his transportation, a descriptive book to this new age he's written, and so perhaps that's what was hidden in there, that descriptive book. Now, from here, since he needs power, all the power comes out to the books here, and so the book is in here. If you look at this, we saw the symbol when we were inside of here, inside the dome for the first time. And it's like each of these goes out somewhere. Well, if you think of the shapes of the islands, you can sort of tell what it is. This here, just the square, is Crater Island. We are out there. This is where we are now. This here is Temple Island. Don't know what this one is. This here is Jungle Island. Like, you can look at the size, and we also don't know what this one is. So we can see and sort of imply that there's 5 islands here, and each of these 5 islands has one of these on it. One of these linking books, or whatever it is. And it's talking about fire marbles, so let's just call them fire marble domes for now. We don't really know what fire marbles are right now, but we'll keep with that for now. Due to the rebels' continued disturbances, I've decided to install a coded access system into all of the domes. Now, we've seen some of these symbols before, or something kind of like them, but we are going to write these symbols down, and we will come back to them in a minute. Let me just write these down real quick. If you're playing Riven or any MISC game, you should always have notepad and paper. Well, if you think about what's going on here is, just remember what the shape, like what was going on in these domes is there was a bunch of sliders, and so you can move them across, and each slider would go somewhere, and so it makes sense to think that these represent some sort of number system. We'll come back to that in a minute once we finish this journal. I caught one of my assistants looking over this journal today. I'm glad I've chosen to write it in a language they cannot decipher, which is English. Note: discuss security with each guild master. No problem suspected from the maintainers, educators, and surveyors. Question the bookmaker and builders more closely. So these are a bunch of sort of guilds it looks like he's set up. Today I had several more reports of spirit sightings by some of the villagers. It seems that under Catherine's leadership, the rebels, on the Black Moiety, as the villagers obstinately insist on referring to him as, have obtained a new level of sophistication in their terror tactics and have renewed their campaign to intimidate the villagers into joining them, playing upon their shared superstitions. The villagers are certainly susceptible to this form of coercion, specifically given of late to the rebels' increasing acts of vandalism and theft. Okay, so this is revealing. So it tells us that there are two groups here. There's Catherine's leadership, which are rebels, the Black Moiety, so we'll call them the Moiety, and then there are the villagers. And so the rebels and the villagers are sort of different, but also we have all these guilds that we're talking about. So it's probably safe to say that the rebels are rebelling against Gehn and all of his guilds and his people, whereas the villagers are kind of there in the middle, sort of being swayed. There's some sort of war or some sort of conflict going on. And, well, think back to the very first thing we saw in this game when we started out and we were in, when we got trapped. There was that first guy who came up to us and stole our trap book from us. But then he got shot in the back and somebody else came up. And that person was dressed differently, dressed in sort of a red, and jammed that dagger into the lever after helping us get out. Now perhaps the first guy was Gehn's guard. If you think about it, that trap there would be put in place and Gehn would want to see who's there, so his guard comes up. But then the rebel, the moiety member, comes up and frees us. And we have another connection now. Think about what the rebel did to the lever. He or she jammed a dagger into it, and that's that dagger that's got a very sort of unique. It's got like the circle on it, a line, and then just goes down like that. And next time we see one, I'll point it out. But the fact that we've seen these a lot of places makes us think, first of all, since it came from that person, perhaps it's a symbol of the moiety. And if we're going to go off that assumption, then every time we see one of those, there's some sort of moiety connection, some connection to them. They would have put it there for some reason. And what is that reason? Well, let's keep on going. The Ytram traps have been steadily fruitful this year. Apparently, the breakup of the islands has not adversely affected the subterranean ecosystems. Unfortunately, the rebels are experiencing a similarly generous harvest. No shortage of poison for their darts this season. Such morbid issues aside, the sudden availability has allowed me to refine a particularly pleasant extract from my pipe, and that is smoother than any of the others from recent years. Okay, a couple things. One, he's talking about trapping stuff. He's talking about trapping Ytrams. And, well, we know what that probably is. That's the frog. That's the trap that we saw earlier. We also learned that the rebels are using them for poison darts. And that sort of confirms our suspicions earlier. Remember, at the very beginning of the game, he got hit by a blow dart. And so that would have been the rebels who have done that. And finally, an interesting tidbit. Why does Gehn want these Ytrams? Because he smokes them. He gets extract from them and puts them in his pipe. Chemical analysis of one of the rebel knives, rebel knives, there we go, has yielded curious results. Its composition contains elements that are unlike anything I've encountered on the islands. It appears that they have access to a resource of which I am unaware, perhaps a mine, an uncharted island, and there it is. This is the rebel knife I was talking about earlier. And Gehn is saying, it seems like the rebels are getting materials from somewhere he doesn't know about. Note, most of the knives have been found on the south side of the village. This is the same area in which there have been reports of people mysteriously disappearing. I think a closer inspection of the area is warranted. The fact that they leave these distinctive knives as a sign of their presence concerns me. They're growing more bold, and seem to no longer fear discovery of their hideout. The latest measurements indicate that the recent trend has continued. The movement of the islands has slowed tremendously. My previous estimates predicted a total collapse in approximately 3 months, but with these new figures I am uncertain. I've nearly finished writing the somethingth age, and I have every faith that it will indeed be a safe place for us to relocate to. Yet it would be helpful to know what has caused the halt in this age's breakup. Is it possible that it's stable after all? If so, I must discover how this age differs from my less successful attempts. My examination of the blank age have thus far proven inconclusive. So he's saying the instability of the age is slowing down, and he doesn't know why. Well, we do know why. It's actually Atrus, because Atrus is writing changes into the age to try and keep it more stable, and have it more stable for him. And Gehn is realizing he's aware of these changes, and he doesn't know why it's happening. But Atrus does. Or perhaps someone is repairing damage to the fifth age. Yeah, he just got it. If so, it would almost certainly be Atrus doing. Okay, I didn't even have to explain that. I've reluctantly decided to abandon my experiments with the behavior of the water of this age, as there are more pressing matters upon which I now must concentrate, leaving me little time for such a speculative research. For future references, however, my investigations to this point have revealed the following. I believe the remarkable properties of the water to be caused by a life form that resides in it, specifically a type of bacteria. I'm imagining a motile unicellular organism, but one with structures capable of holding bits of water, whose combined effect, via surface tension, a stronger force, causes the composite body of water to move in response to heat. Prolonged exposure to extreme heat, for example, a period of extended boiling, seems to kill the bacteria, which would explain its dramatic aversion to heat sources. Unfortunately, these theories are still not fully tested, and I remain ignorant of both its deeper nature and its possible uses. So, Gehn seems to have an explanation for that water that we've seen so far. And if you think about it, the water's always sort of had areas, like think in the jungle island, where there's sort of holes in the water. And he says the reason for that is it's got bacteria in it, which causes it to hold itself up away from heat to survive. And even further, think about when we took the logging cart up here, there's a bunch of we went through a bunch of circles with a bunch of bright orange things, and perhaps what that was heat to keep the water out. And so that heat forced the water away and allowed us to travel through the tunnel. An exciting development. Last night, a squad of maintainers stumbled upon a lone rebel scout and obtained from him the most incredible device. It is a crystal that somehow powers these flawed linking books, much as my own system does, but with an obvious advantage. It is small and weighs only a few pounds, making it completely portable. Catherine must have fabricated the device before I captured her, obviously with an explicit dunny schematic she must have brought with her to this age. If only I had had access to such a document all these years. Regardless, I can now concentrate solely on the writing of ages, and need no longer worry about building elaborate power supplies for each new book I write. This is a sobering reminder, however, that I must continue to avenue to Dunny. Regaining my access to the resources there may be crucial to the completion of my mission. So there's a picture of the crystal. And that's where it ends. So he says apparently the moiety have access to these crystals, which allow them to use linking books without the big power systems that Gehn creates. So that was a very, very revealing journal, and I think I tried to explain as much of it as I could as we went, but we sort of get a much clearer sense of what's going on in Gehn's struggle versus these rebels and everyone else, and how Catherine is kind of this leader of the rebels versus Gehn. And it just sort of shows us what his perspective is on these things. And so another thing is we clearly know that this is Gehn's laboratory, or his workroom or whatever, but also there's another age that he uses, which he hides using those fire marble domes. So we're going to explore the rest of this, but we're going to go ahead and do that in the next episode because we wanted to spend most of our time reading this journal. So this has been RetroGamingNow playing Riven, the sequel to Myst, my favorite game, and I will see you guys later. Have a great day.